Hello, and welcome to this week's discussion about medical terms used in relation to the endocrine system. The endocrine system, as we're going to talk about, has locations throughout the metropolitan human body, okay? And the endocrine system, for the most part, is in charge of hormones. Okay. Now, there are times in our lives when we are all very aware of the impact of hormones. Puberty in the early teenage years, or I guess mid-teenage, whatever. Okay. And then, of course, we have what I call puberty the sequel, which is menopause for women. And of course, men call their puberty the sequel, their midlife crisis. Okay. But the fact is that we all have this impact from our hormones. And hormones are necessary, even though they can turn on us, as I just stated, are necessary for the proper processing of functions throughout the body in multiple organ systems. Because as you've been learning, it's all hand in hand. Okay. And we're going to go over some key terms that you need to become familiar with regard to the endocrine system. And if you go to work for an endocrinologist, then you will learn all the intricate terms as well. But as we talk about every week, learning medical terminology, just like any other language, is a process. It is not something that goes like that. So this is to get you familiar and understand what these terms actually relate to, instead of just having a list of vocabulary terms for you to learn. So let's take a look at the endocrine system. Now, on the right, although this woman does not look very happy, on the right you have the female body, and on the left you have the male body. And you can see that there are great deals of similarities in almost the entire body until we get to, and perfectly logical, until we get to the genital area. And for the women, we have ovaries are a producer of hormones, and the placenta during pregnancy. Of course, the placenta is only available at that time during pregnancy. And in the men, the male hormones are located in the testicles. So as you can see, the good news is we have a lot in common. And while the hormones may function slightly differently because they have slightly different functions in the male body as they do in the female body, the good news is you only have one list of terms to learn. Okay. Until we get to the, private parts. All right. So let's take a look. The top of the list, always starting at the head, is the hypothalamus. And as you can see from this illustration, it is deeply embedded in the center of the brain. All right. It's located within the third ventricle of the brain. Remember, we learned about the ventricles of the brain and how they are separated by sulci. Okay. And this, of course, is different than the ventricles of the heart, of course, which again is why it's very important that you learn these terms in context, as opposed to, again, just that laundry list of terms, because just like in the English language, we may have one word that has multiple meanings depending upon the context. And if you remember cervix, right? You have cervical vertebrae right here where your brain attaches to your spine. And women have a second cervix, which is the opposite end of the canal. Okay. So, or I shouldn't say the canal, the sculpture. Okay. So it's very important that you cannot take a word out of context, which is why you're learning these terms. So as you progress in your career preparation, you will understand the importance of physician documentation, which is the documentation of everything that has been going on with this patient from the physician's point of view or the provider. Okay, it could be a nurse practitioner. Okay. So again, this is the point of what we're doing. And you might say, well, each week it kind of looks more like an anatomy class than a medical terminology class. But of course, without the terminology, you don't know what the anatomy, you don't know what you're looking at, right? Okay. All right. So the hypothalamus is responsible for the creation of 8 different hormones. So it all starts right here in the brain. And if you know teenagers who are going through puberty, what more can I say? All right. Next, we're going to look at the pituitary gland. Now, just go back for a second, and I want you to notice in the subsection of the illustration, you notice these 2 balls, okay? They kind of look like testicles, but they're not, although they're similar in the fact that they contain hormones. But this is all in your brain. It's all part of and connected to the hypothalamus. Okay. So again, this is that yellow spot in the brain. All right. So the pituitary glands have 2 lobes, which is what you just looked at. Those 2 balls, if you will. And one is called the adenohypophysis. Now you look at that word and you say, it's like the whole alphabet in one word. We sound it out, right? We take it apart. Adenohypophysis. This creates hormones when the hypothalamus tells it to. It's kind of like that trigger. Okay, you, the brass section, play. Okay. It's larger and it sits anteriorly, remember, in front of. And then the other one, the smaller lobe, is the neurohypophysis, which stores 2 types of hormones that come from the hypothalamus. Okay. So we have produce and release, and then we have the storage tank. Okay. Good. All right. Now we have the thyroid, and the thyroid is right here. Right here. Okay. You can see how it wraps around the trachea, which is the tube behind. And the trachea, remember, is the pipe that leads into the lungs. Okay. Remember when you're breathing, we talked about the respiratory system, and the air goes down the trachea into the bronchi. Remember the upside down tree? Okay. Well, right around here is the thyroid gland. And this reaches around the trachea. And it's connected by an isthmus. 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 Say that 10 times fast. You'll never forget it. But, okay. The thyroid gland has subsections and subparts, okay? The hypothyroid and the thyroid gland is responsible, again, for producing particular hormones, particularly connected to the metabolism of the body. So, especially women, but everybody should at a certain age, I want to say like in your 30s, you should get your thyroid checked, or it should be, the blood work is typically part of the regular annual, physical, to check your the thyroid gland. People with hyperthyroidism, which means it's producing more than it's supposed to, tend to have a high metabolism rate, tend to be thinner, and below, tend to have a slower metabolism. And this is often involved in women, mostly women, but men too, okay, who find they're having trouble losing weight because your body is working against you. Isn't that nice? Huh. I've been with you since the beginning and you're working out, you turn on me. Shame. But this is, this is how parts of the body sometimes function. But you will see, if you next time you go for blood work, see if your doctor orders a TSH. That's thyroid stimulating hormone. And that is the hormone that is produced, that tells the thyroid to produce. It's like this chain reaction. It's like a whole manufacturing plant. Maybe we should get Jeff Bezos in here to reorganize the way it works, because he's really good at process. Jeff Bezos owns Amazon, but never mind. All right, now the adrenal glands. The yellow little caps on top of the kidneys are your adrenal glands. They sit on top of each of your kidneys. That's superior aspect on top of the kidneys, which is why they are, also known as the suprarenal glands. Again, I don't know why they have to have two names for the same thing, but they didn't invite me to the meeting. All right. They produce more than 25 adrenocortical hormones, also known as corticosteroids and corticosteroids. Corticoids and corticosteroids. Okay. So you've heard of steroids and corticosteroids, and this is the natural creation of those hormones, which positively impact the function of the body. And that's where they sit, right on top of the kidneys. And last but not least, we have the pancreas. Do you remember the pancreas? We talked about the pancreas when we talked about the gastrointestinal system, because remember, the pancreas participates in the digestive system. And you can see here, you see the green, it's not a plant, it's not a leaf, it's a gallbladder, and then the bile duct that comes out of the liver, remember, stores the extra bile in the gallbladder, and then it goes down the duct and it feeds into the duodenum, part of the entryway into the small intestine. Okay. But you also remember we talked about the pancreas, because a malfunction, usually a congenital malfunction in the pancreas, is the cause of type 1 diabetes. Okay. So the pancreas is very, very busy with all it has to do. And it also is part of the endocrine system, and the pancreatic islets. Do you remember when we were talking last week or a couple weeks ago, we talked about diabetes mellitus and the islets of Langerhans, which are the pancreatic islets. They're kind of in the center of the pancreas, and they are clusters of endocrine cells. They also have hormones. Man, these hormones are just coming from everywhere. Isn't that incredible? Okay. So this is also why, and I don't know why I don't have a slide for it, but this is also why if a woman has an oophorectomy, which is the surgical removal of the ovaries, or a man has an orchidectomy, which is the surgical removal of the testicles, they both will typically have problems with hormones because both the testicles and the ovaries are also sources for hormones. And that's where you get women talking about hormone replacement therapy, okay? And men who have an orchidectomy, either on purpose or by accident, which they have to take artificial testosterone, okay? So it's a very complicated, and I just want to come back here for a second so you can again look at the entire endocrine system and how it functions throughout your body. There is no one point like the circulatory system, you know, the heart is main focus, and then you have the arteries and the veins. Okay. And then we have the nervous system where the brain is the focus, and then we have the spinal cord and the peripheral nerves come off of this. This, as you can see, is different because each of the different locations of these sources of hormones are different. They produce different hormones that have different jobs, okay? But for now, this is just medical terminology class, and all you have to do again is become familiar with these terms, have an idea what they relate to, review them often again, and I tell you this every single week, but this is not something where you sit down with a medical dictionary and start to memorize all the terms and their definitions, unless you are Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory or Spencer Reed from Criminal Minds. Okay, use that medical dictionary, please, please, please. You do not want to ingrate a term with the wrong definition into your memory banks. And whenever necessary, whenever you don't understand something, whenever you're not sure, wherever you like clarification, whatever it is, querying, ask me. It makes you look smart. It really does. And when you want to ask me, what are you going to do? You're going to email me. Okay, you're going to email me and I will explain, or we could set up an appointment to speak, or we can do a FaceTime or a one-on-one Zoom or a phone, you know, the old-fashioned phone, record phone, right? Okay, it's too much for texting. Okay, but whatever it is, I'm here for you. I'm here to support your learning. I'm here to get you off on the right foot toward an incredibly successful career in healthcare, and also be a better advocate for yourself and your loved ones in the doctor's office. Okay? Any questions? All righty then. Have a great day. I'm in the middle of a hurricane, Hurricane Nicole. She's just rain and wind. It's cool. All right. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you in the classroom. I'm in there every day, 7 days a week. Bye-bye.